I'm Alex Howard.
And I'm Amanda Silver, and this is Dirty Laundry.
Just go. Tell me about the squirrel.
I'm going to tell you.
I want to hear all about the squirrel.
You're going to be really upset. You're an animal lover like me. I am such an animal lover. Like I don't know if you know this about me.
Okay.
But when I was 15, I spent every weekend volunteering at an animal hospital, or I would alternate between the animal hospital and the animal shelter.
Oh,
every weekend.
Is this your camping days? That I also
I was also yes, I was like
you on?
that was I spent every weekend like animals. They'd be putting animals down. I'd be lying with them. Like they'd be taking their blood. Like I was just like I love animals. So this story that's come out, and I don't know how you haven't seen it. It's like it's gone viral about Peanut the squirrel.
No, I don't know anything about it.
It was actually on Cuomo. He was featuring it yesterday. Like he was almost in tears over this story, and I was in tears watching it. So I don't know all of the details, so bear with me. But there's this viral, like this YouTuber who he went viral because of his relationship with his squirrel. So he trained this squirrel.
Oh, the obstacle course guy?
No, not him. Not
because I watched a lot of that. That was some cool shit.
Not obstacle course squirrel guy, a different guy.
Okay.
Anyway, so he just would film his squirrel. He'd be baking and his squirrel would be rolling around his little oats, and he would jump on him and like carry him around
in the house.
In the house, he was domesticated this squirrel. This little squirrel. He would be cooking, and like the squirrel sits on his shoulder, and he was so sweet, Peanut. And he got this big following and started making money, and decided I'm going to open up an animal shelter and rescue animals and use this. I think he had a raccoon too that was also domesticated. Use it for good. So his wife and him moved to, I think it was upstate New York, or somewhere in New York. They have horses to have this animal sanctuary. Last week, the Department of, I don't know what it was. I don't know what even DEC stands for, some type of government agency. 15 of them came into his house and ransacked the place, took the squirrel, took the raccoon, and put them both down.
No.
Killed Peanut.
Murdered them?
Murdered Peanut.
For what? What cause? What rationale?
Oh, it's some public safety risk. He doesn't have a lion in his house. He doesn't have a gorilla in his house. This was this little innocent squirrel that he domesticated and who was doing he was doing good. Like it was just, and he's like, the squirrel obviously does not have rabies. He's lived in his house for 7 years. And if they were concerned about that, there's a method to test for rabies
like you
too.
Just murder people?
Well, not people, animals, but they just killed them. And so, he's been now going on all the platforms to talk about Peanut's story. And it's so sad because it's what they did to this animal. Horrible. Like they could have.
That's like coming in and just killing your dog or cat.
Exactly.
There's got to be laws, I guess, because it's a quote
unquote
wild
animal. But then he's like, I would have followed the proper protocol to get that animal registered, or the paperwork, whatever we needed to do. But they made their whole life about. And it was not only his obviously his affection for the squirrel, but it was also his business. His lifeline was also this squirrel.
It's awful.
And so, justice for Peanut.
Is there going to be some recourse?
So it's gone viral. People are talking about it. So look it up. You'll see. I don't know what the recourse is going to be, but why did they have to put them down?
It seems like a very extreme reaction to something for a fucking squirrel.
And his argument also was they had the resources, or they spent the resources, taxpayer dollars, to send 12 or 15, officers into his home to tear it apart to find this squirrel and this raccoon. Couldn't their resources be used for better?
So do you think someone complained, or
that's what they think is somebody complained? But even still,
seems weird
to do that to Peanut,
to go that extreme.
And it's one thing to say, we need proof that he doesn't have rabies, but there's squirrels everywhere.
I was going to say, I have about 30 living in my backyard.
Exactly.
Yeah, Squirrel Highway.
It's not it's an exotic animal that he's keeping in his home.
Well, that's the thing. And you see all of these shows, Tiger King, and the latest one with Tonka, the friggin', I think, chimpanzee.
Oh, those are dangerous.
That shit's crazy.
I get. A chimpanzee
Still
in your home
don't encourage going in and murdering them.
Don't murder them, but they don't belong in a home. A chimpanzee doesn't really belong.
A squirrel is basically just a big-tailed rat.
It's the most harmless little thing. Who was that little Peanut hurting?
Justice for Peanut.
Justice for Peanut.
God, that one's not. I don't love that one.
No, that was I was just very upset about it. So I had to share.
Rightly so.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Peanut.
So anything happy that you can share?
Nothing.
Does it put a damper on the
No.
justice for Peanut?
Oh, but actually, you know what loves a good
I
segue?
love a good segue. It just
We are talking to an American lawyer today.
Yeah.
But the American system is a unique one.
It is unique, but also when you have 52 states,
that are all different.
They're all different.
Yeah.
You know, it's different than up here.
And you also have so many like government organizations that are quote unquote fighting, you know, like police force, FBI, the DOJ, the CIA.
Well, they have to think about the population though.
Absolutely.
We have a smidgen of their populations. We don't need all that.
Yeah, we don't need all of that. But it is interesting how they operate so siloed.
Right. But that happens here too. I don't think that they communicate as well as they probably should. Like I know that, for example, if you go to family court here and you have a criminal case going on, because often they're happening at the same time with domestic violence and all that, they don't automatically know. Like they don't communicate. So you have to let your family court know that you have a criminal case open. Sometimes they can put them together, but they need to know. They don't know all.
That's a good point. Yeah. It's actually really important. Yeah. So good thing people are listening.
Yeah.
Might need to know that. That's really interesting.
Today on Dirty Laundry, we have Heather B. Quick of Florida Women's Law Group. And she is an incredible attorney who with years of experience. And what's so interesting about her firm is that it's all women and they only represent women in family law cases. So really excited to hear about her work, about how the States differs from here in Canada. We talk a lot about Canadian laws. So it'll be really interesting to hear about how they do it down south. So welcome, Heather. Let's start from the beginning. How did you come to what you do? You have a female-focused family law group that represents only women and is represented by only women?
Yes.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah. What made you decide to do that?
Well, it evolved, right? Yeah. Everything's an evolution. And I graduated from law school and was a prosecutor. I love that. I'm a huge like Law and Order fan, love criminal law, loved putting people in jail. Like it was just a great job, and being in court, jury work and everything. So I love that. And I think that's, was definitely a path. My uncle, who's a lawyer, and then my grandfather was a judge. So that was definitely where they're like, you need to do that, which I did. And then, naturally, most prosecutors then become defense lawyers, right? So you're like, okay, I leave the prosecutor's office, but then that was really not in my blood. I was like, no, I'm not going to get you out of jail. Like you were drunk driving, right? You're going to jail. So and we do have public defenders. So especially misdemeanor crimes, very often, you're going to get the help and, I'm not going to make some huge difference. I mean, and a lot of other people do, but I felt like it wasn't really for me. And then as I would get family law cases, I found I was really good at it. And the more I did it, I became better. And, the aha moment is, well, both of my parents, they were divorced when I was very young. And then my dad was subsequently married 2 more times and divorced. And my mother was subsequently married, I think 2 more in a divorce and then a relationship. And now she's still married. He is not. He's single. But so I got like a front row seat, at the whole thing. And it gives me so much insight into divorce. And when they're talking about their kids, like, well, I was a kid, like I went through this, and then, the various personalities of which my mother kind of married the same kind of guy again and again, very much, a narcissist. So I got a firsthand row seat at that. And then with the crazy ladies my dad married, like firsthand seat at that, like the whole thing. And, so it just made it seem like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. And I am a people person. And I will toot my own horn. I am really smart and creative and willing. I do listen to people. Lawyers don't listen. And so I listen and really try to help them achieve their goals. And what I started to notice pretty early on was how much I enjoyed my women clients, especially the ones who discounted what they brought to the marriage or what they deserved leaving the
Yes.
marriage.
Yes.
And me and I'm still married, which that's what's like great. I mean, I'm married 23 years. We've got 3 kids. And so, but I'm still very much like, yeah, like the mom does everything. She should get everything and all that, right? The law isn't on my side on that,
No.
but I am very much, pro that.
Pro mom. Yeah.
Yeah, pro mom for sure. And I just felt like those women, like I could really make a difference.
Yeah.
Like if we are really, because they kept doing the same thing. You see patterns of behavior that women continue to do over and over. And I thought, well, if that makes me happy, because I can't make him a better husband, I can't make him a better father, but I can get you as much money as we possibly can. And that makes me feel good for you. Because too many women, I think shortchange themselves as to, what they're entitled to. So that was what really first drove me. And I was like, I think we'll represent women only. And, it's just built and built. And then we find, women employees and lawyers who just have, for whatever various reason, that same drive to be like, yeah, I want to help women. And it's grown. And now we've got 30 employees, 6 lawyers, and buying a much bigger building so we can go and fit everybody into one location. So it's very exciting.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats.
I love hearing stories like that,
And I love, one thing I just pulled from that was you mentioned that you're creative. So I love this because Amanda and I, as mediators, we talk often with our clients about this idea of coming up with creative solutions, that we're not in the confines of a court. We can actually really think outside the box and get creative. Do you find that as a lawyer in a court system, you're able to sort of bring that creativity to your negotiations?
Absolutely. When it's appropriate, because you also have to be so strategic in negotiations, right? Particularly with men, and the guy clients, or I don't know, I have, it's got to be their idea. Right. But I mean, it's pretty easy to make them think it's their idea. So, I mean, that's the reality, right? That it's pretty easy to outfox them. Doesn't take a whole lot. Sure. So, but yes, and that's part of being creative. And that's why,
it's the strategy.
It's the strategy and really thinking the whole thing through. And, what is your ultimate goal? Because what's a win for you? And it doesn't have to be, I want him to pay and lose. I'm like, okay, good luck. And really, that's not going to feel that great.
Yeah.
You really got to think about what you want. How do we achieve that? And how does he still achieve what he wants? Not that we're in control of that. And that's for mediation, but being really helping our clients see, the whole picture and identifying what they want instead of telling them what they want or what they're entitled to. I mean, that's important.
Yeah.
You need to understand where our parameters are, but often they want more than that, or they want something different. And back in the day when I was just, always in the courtroom, and I would always take my one junior partner now who's been with me like 11 years. She's like, if Heather tells you it's an interesting case, man, you better run away because she's assigning it to you. And she's telling you we're going to win and we have to figure out how. Like, this is what I want. Yeah. I'd be like, this is the issue and this is the result I'm looking for. So go figure out how we're going to do it.
How you're going to get there.
I love
it's
that.
so interesting.
We can get there.
Yeah.
We can get there.
And you have to place everything.
To be creative and really listening. Like what I said, like, so many things related to children are very fact specific.
Yeah.
With the law. Like it's just so fact intensive. And the only way to know the facts is to really listen and listen and then draw out, right? It's not one brick, but you bring me like 20 and hey, I think I can build us a path. And now we've got to be able to craft that narrative for the judge if we're in trial or even in mediation, which I think we spoke about on your when you guys were on my show. We do a whole day mediation. We just like to power through and really make everybody suffer. And it's like a mini presentation in a way. Like this is what we're going to show in court, and this is how we think we're going to do it. So hoping that they see you have leverage.
Right. That's a smart tactic.
And then we can get to settle. And then we can get to a settlement, right? Yeah. Women are like, I want all this. All right. I'm like, well, where's our leverage? Because what does he want that we
right.
have? Or how do we make this work? Because nobody goes in and settles for their worst day.
So let's talk a little bit about the states and sort of what the family law system looks like. It is not federal, or are there bits and pieces that are?
No, everything is statutory by state. And I only practice in Florida,
Sure.
licensed in DC as well. And I believe Louisiana is a bit different. So I won't speak to that.
Okay.
But generally, you're going to have your statutes, and that's going to govern, right, what it takes to get married and then what it takes to get divorced. And, really lines out, say, hey, these are our laws as it relates to child support, spousal support, and our statute on how you determine time sharing. We also have all the statutes as it relates to paternity, having a child outside of marriage, still a lot of litigation on that. And things that'll be different, right? I've interviewed several attorneys throughout the states, and things that are like you'll see as glaring differences is like, one, how long do you have to be a resident in a state to get a divorce? And secondly, how long do you have to be separated, if at all? Because some states, and I don't know if you guys said the same in Canada, like you have to be separated a year.
Yeah, the year.
Some states require you to physically, you cannot live in the same place.
Oh, interesting.
And that can be really, really
That's
difficult
tough.
for people, right?
Tough.
Financially.
Exactly.
And so that, I know North Carolina for sure. There were some other states, but it's been a while since I've interviewed them. So those will be a lot of things like spousal support. Really not going to get much of that in Texas, if any. Florida, we used to have some pretty good alimony, spousal support laws. They've been curtailed a bit, and now it's a formula. They had been really lobbying that for many, many years. So those will be some. And then like on what's you separate property, meaning your premarital property, or is it equitable distribution versus community property? So some states do community property, which I spoke with a lawyer from Texas, and she said usually that can be more advantageous to the non-earning spouse in a community property state. But those are the minorities. There aren't a whole lot of those. So, there can be quite a bit of differences. And so sometimes, people are so mobile now that they, it seems they move around a lot. Certainly since the pandemic, people are like, well, I can work virtually. So it certainly has happened where someone's like, well, we are living in Florida, but, thinking of living here. It's like, well, if you want a divorce, you ought to talk to probably a lawyer in each state and figure out.
So I'm curious then, you quickly mentioned parenting time, as we call it here. Is that fairly heavily, like, are you seeing patterns right now? We're seeing kind of a default to 50-50 where both parents are getting shared time. Again, if it makes sense, yada, yada. But for argument's sake, it's sort of defaulting to 50-50. How are you experiencing that in Florida?
So we recently in 2023 had a change to the state statutes that now the presumption is 50-50.
It is, okay.
And so it starts there, and then we look at the best interest of the children.
Right.
Prior to that, it was best interest of the children, and you would see things based on geography, right? South Florida, Miami, they're more metropolitan than we are up here in South, North Florida, South Georgia, they're more metropolitan, whatever. So they were really seeing 50-50 way more often, maybe even in Tampa. But when you get up here in the Panhandle, they're a little more conservative, maybe more traditional families. So you were seeing not back to when I first started practicing family laws, every other weekend and a dinner night. That was it.
Yeah. Right.
Don't even ask for Thursday to Sunday. It was Friday to Sunday and just a dinner night. And then it really evolved to maybe a longer weekend, and now a lot more 50-50. And I do think I don't think it's right that that's where everybody starts, because it then just forces litigation in case it might not be right.
Yeah.
The judges should, look at the best interest of the children, and they still do. But I think it does trend more to families.
Right.
Dads are more involved. I mean, women still do all the work, right? I believe, they do twice as much. They work outside the house and inside the house.
And get paid less.
However,
Yep.
get paid less, right? And appreciated less.
Yep.
But that is where we're going here. And really it's very difficult when there's a situation where, like our client who would be the woman is just like, really can't embrace that. And it's hard, for her. And it's, we got to get there. And, of course you have to look at the ages of the children and the needs. And if there are special needs and certain things that make it more difficult, but the courts still look at dads as if, oh, wow, Superman, he wants him half the time. That's fabulous. There you go. It's like, what are you talking about?
And then the onus is on mom to prove why he shouldn't have it versus why he should, maybe.
Like he's never done anything.
Right.
And so, but they're like, oh, biology is all that matters. So that's just a strong pill for many women to accept. I completely agree, but I don't make the laws, and so we've got to figure out a way to help them through that.
And is your child support based on parenting time? Up in Canada, it's like if you're 50-50, you're counting both parents' income into the calculation for child support. If there's a primary parent, then you're only looking at the secondary parent's income to base support on. So Amanda and I discussed ad nauseum how it's a bit of a conflict of interest that you would want more time with your child, even if you couldn't feasibly handle it, just so that you're not paying as much in child support. Similar kind of vibe down there?
Yeah, so it always takes in, we have a formula that is very outdated, but it is what it is. It always takes both their incomes. Okay. So even if you had and if you were receiving alimony, then that's counted in. And then, but the kicker is the overnights. And so at 40%, so it was always, clients would be like, he says he wants 40%. And I would say, well, let me tell you why.
Right.
Because at 40%, it really changed the amount of child support he would have to pay. And so then at the 50%, it goes down even less. However, if he makes more, if he makes 70, like let's add both incomes, say you make 30, he makes 70, just because that's easy math. So he earns 70% of the collected pot. He's still going to have to pay, but the time sharing, the overnights are going to adjust that. So yes, the overnights weigh heavily on the amount of child support.
I'm curious about, we have something here called the voice of the child, where children get a say. And at certain age, it can be ordered in court. Parents can agree on it, where children can be, like, it's usually around the age of 10 and up, sometimes a little bit younger, but usually around 10, where someone can meet with the child and get their views and preferences. And then that could be taken into the court or can be go into the mediation. I'm wondering if Florida has anything like that where the child can air, their preferences out.
We don't have a system that clean or, directed where you can say, this is what we want. You can, they really don't take in the child's preference. What they will do though, is if you wanted to appoint a guardian ad litem, but they don't testify. They're like there to kind of just make sure the child's needs are met, or an attorney ad litem. They could speak on behalf of the children, but it just doesn't happen very often. It really doesn't. We have all of these factors, and sometimes we'll order an evaluation, which would be like a social investigation, and they look at both homes, they interview everybody and make a recommendation.
Yeah, we have that here too.
Yeah, it's like section 30. Interesting.
Yeah, so we have that. What was interesting is I was recently had on my podcast some women from New York. You guys would love them. They both do it, but they have very similar that they do have a attorney for the child appointed in any contested
Oh,
custody case
automatically.
and they testify as to the child's desires, not the child's best interest.
Oh,
So that can
interesting.
sometimes,
yeah,
I
that's a
like
gray
that
area.
there's an attorney for the children. Automatic. Here you have to go. We have what's called the Office of the Children's Lawyer, and that's based on the court's requests. And usually if there's family violence and there's lots of social services involved, then a lawyer might be appointed for a child, but it's not automatic.
That's so
and I think, you know what? I think that's a good thing, because if you're going to go and battle it out in court, why not have someone who is there to represent the kid?
However, what Heather's just saying is it's not necessarily in their best interest. We have to remember these are children, right? I always say the children have a voice. They don't have a choice. We can't put that much power. That's too much, in my personal opinion.
For a teenager, and then knowing that they impacted that's going to come back and be really, I think, it could be potentially very negative down the road.
I agree.
Because they're going to feel guilt, and they should really not feel as they had any role in whatever is decided, right? Even though it feels like, well, they are powerless, but I think that does eliminate later guilt.
It's too much responsibility. And I mean, already we all see how divorce sort of pulls the kids in both directions. You know, whose house do you want to go to? I don't feel more comfortable here versus there. And now you're adding this extra level of you get to choose. I don't know. It's a fine line. And I think this is kind of the issue in family court, right? We're all focused on the best interest of child and trying to navigate how exactly to determine what that is. And it's not always so cut and dry.
So maybe the way we have it here, where it's based on special circumstances.
And how, I wonder too, just about bias, right? We always talk about impartiality, or how, I just heard this term lately and now I'm totally co-opting it, but omni-partial, where like we kind of see the whole picture.
I like
and
that.
so, fighting for the whole family unit, even from separate homes, but this idea of being omni-partial. So I've seen instances where lawyers are really working so hard for their client. And there is a little bit of themselves put into that, maybe. And not always, not to, poo-poo anything, but you can see sometimes that there is like, oh no, I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to get you this. You deserve this. And then they're going after. And at some point you kind of lose the plot line of like, did your client even want that? How do you navigate that? I mean, you're clearly such an advocate for women and empowering them and getting, everything that they're entitled to. Do you find sometimes you're seeing some blurred lines? Maybe not in you, but just in practices in general?
Oh, I think so. I think, we try to, it can be very easy. I mean, you can see it where you let your ego take control and then you're really, and that can happen in very litigious cases, and the lawyers just get really carried away. And it's like, I don't think that helped anybody. Yeah. Men usually do that, of course, my opinion. But it's like, guys, like, what the hell are you doing? That was bad advice when you told him to stop paying. And they're taking advantage of, hey, the courts are backed up. It's going to take us time to get there.
He's going to go 6 months, a year without support.
Finances are an emergency. And so it's just like, how does that help people overall, stay getting along? Which I'm not saying that is my goal, right? I've always been a litigator.
Right.
But the longer I do it, right, you got to hope I get a little bit wiser. And you start to see and you think, not always is that the best way to go, but sometimes it is. And it's just kind of knowing when to do that. And we really do, we create, for our clients, we really want to know their goals. We create a plan, a strategy plan. What are their goals? So that that's what you wanted and that's what we got, and so that they're clear, because that's part of the education process. You need to know, you're not going to know on day one, but you have an idea of what you want this to look like. And I think it's really important for, the attorneys to know, because it may be completely unrealistic. So we gotta, then no matter what you do, you didn't do what they wanted or they think, because they're, most of our clients, this is the first time they've hired an attorney.
Right.
And, it's just, I think everybody envisions the legal system what they see on TV
From
and movies. Like, I
TV.
mean, it's just,
Yeah.
it is. It's what we
Yeah.
see.
Have your day in
And you
court
don't
and you're
know.
going to win. There's a winner and there's a clear winner, and it's
And
not
wait till
always.
the judge hears
Yeah.
all of this stuff. And
Yeah.
it's like, he's not going to hear it all. It's all irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's so
And
irrelevant.
That's what
you're
it is.
not
It's
talking about any of
so
this.
much is
Yeah.
irrelevant. None
Well,
of it.
I find it harder even for us because Canadian law is completely different than what they're seeing on American television. So
Right.
it's like
and we're a no fault system
we're complete
here.
no-fault
So, you know,
system.
unfortunately, like I will have people in tears because of an affair or, you know, and I'm sorry, it's not relevant. And it's such a hard thing to tell people.
because they want to be vindicated.
And the
They've been
emotions
hurt
are so raw there and they're so hurt and they
Yeah.
want that to mean something. They want some, like you
And
said,
recourse,
vindication.
yeah.
And that's where, and we're no fault as well.
Okay.
I think pretty much all the states in the US are. But that's where our mediators do a wonderful job because that's where our clients can be heard. Because we're in mediation, right? Now the rules of
Yes.
evidence, you can tell them what a no good POSE is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. And because if I've heard it once, I heard it a million. Well, I'll wait till I tell the judge. I'm like, you're not telling the judge any of that, right?
Exactly.
You're not if we're your lawyers. And
It's not in anyone's
even if we're
best
not,
interest. Yeah.
the judge is going to yell at you and tell you to stop. And that's a really uncomfortable position that nobody wants to be in. So mediation, in addition to hopefully, getting that resolution, there is a lot of therapeutic benefits for clients to tell their story. People just want to be heard.
Yeah.
And, and then, in that room, you can be like, yeah, I hear you. I hear you. He's awful, no good. What do you call it? But why in the world would he give you 100% everything? It's not going to happen.
Right.
So let's get to where you want to go. And then I'll go talk to the other side and who knows what they say over there. But I imagine it's pretty similar, right?
Yeah.
Just to build trust and rapport on each side. But yet with everybody understanding, hey, my goal is for you two. Because if you doesn't matter to me. I have another couple in here. We're mediating, and now you got to deal with the judge. But, if we are able to come to terms, maybe there's a little less animosity over time. There will certainly be less money spent.
Yes.
And, what we help our clients is like, we're advising you. We're not going to sign off on anything that would be illegal or really detrimental to you. So, it's an opportunity. It's overwhelming. And also I think, as much as people want closure, not everybody is quite ready for it.
And you as a lawyer, I mean, I always joke about how there's a bit of a conflict of interest in that the more your clients are, in court and fighting and your billable hours are going up, are you hoping to settle? Like, are you wanting that? Or as you mentioned, you're a litigator, or do you want to go to court? What's your personal?
So I used to, love a good fight and a battle. But if I could settle for him, I'd rather do that because it's a lot of work. And yes, we're getting paid, but it is, right? It's like they're paying us and I can't guarantee it, right? I want my client to really be in the best position possible. And, back in the day, I had a lot of trials and really it's because the husband just wouldn't settle. Like he was being unreasonable and there was no choice. So we ended up with great results, but it's because for what they were offering, was not really reasonable. But I used to tell my staff this all the time, right? Because our goal is like, can we get this done in 12 months? Now it's really 12 to 18 months because let me tell you, after 18 months, I'm kind of tired of looking at it and I'm the one getting paid, right? Like think of how they feel.
Exactly.
Think of how they feel about being involved with us for so long and paying us rather than, I have relationships. I mean, not like we go out to lunch or anything, but like that connected still to clients that I've had like even before my kids or when I was pregnant with my oldest, who's almost 22, like, because it is relational. It's like we got through this together. I see them, occasionally, throughout town and, they're remarried or other kids. And it's just like, it's a great thing. So our goal is definitely to get them the best result. And most of the time that is in mediation.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not. It's like, no, we're going to have to go and
There's
battle
a time
it
and a
out.
place. Yeah.
Yeah. But like for us, and I mean, hey, there are attorneys, who probably should have picked a different area of law, and they're like, we'll just go to trial. And I'm like, like you should, like, I'm going to get everything I'm just asked you for. Like,
right.
You would just rather be paid to do it. And sure enough, that is what happened. But it's like, we do have that approach. And then, but that's where you're stuck, right? Who's on the other side?
Exactly.
And who's represented? We only control so very little of
and who's the judge? That's the other thing
the
too,
juddes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, you never know.
Do you get costs as well? Like, if you're successful for your client, does the other side have to pay their legal fees?
Well, that's it depends, right?
Yeah.
A favorite lawyer answer, but because a lot of the fees generally have been paid through marital funds.
Interesting.
So it kind of divided the pot, but sometimes we do. And, we do require our clients, like, you've got to find the money.
Yeah.
So you got to get family, take a loan, whatever. So if that were the case, then we tend to have more opportunity. But, they really split everything, equitable distribution, most of the time, 50-50. So there are opportunities to get fees, but not as often as I think, 20 years ago. And I don't know why. And maybe more lawyers would just be like, all right, we'll just get the judge will just order us the fees at the end of the day. But the laws really changed because they're like, well, it's coming out of that same pot, so to speak. That's all marital. So she paid her fees, he paid his. They kind of both paid for each other's fees already. So unless, she just doesn't have access to the money.
Since you have a female practice, what would you say is like the number one advice that you would give women who are going through divorce, whether it's a do or a don't? Your number one takeaway
is don't be afraid to ask the questions, because we don't know what we don't know. And I think that too often women in particular, as people pleasers, they're just not going to ask that one question that's really bothering them. And, you're paying the lawyer or paying the mediator, ask questions, and I'm going to give you a second one. Don't be afraid to get a second opinion.
Ooh, I like it. Yeah.
We do it with our health. We would do it for our kids. Like anything you would do for your child, start there. Like
it's a good baseline.
Half of that for yourself.
Yeah.
And you'll be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Really
I love
great.
that.
Yeah.
Heather, thank you so much. This has been so great.
And how do people want to, if they want to get in touch with you or your firm, how do they do that?
So they can go to our website, which is www.Florida Women's Law Group, and not an apostrophe, but Women's Law Group. And we also have, I think it's @4womenlaw, the number 4, for our social media, Instagram and Facebook. And our podcast on all the podcast streamings is Women Winning Divorce, which you guys were my guest on.
So the pleasure of doing that.
We love, that's been one of my greatest things, just to provide resources. But we have a ton of stuff on our website, lots of resources, because, education is power.
You got it.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather.
This episode was written and created by Alex Howard and Amanda Silver, produced, edited, and engineered by RTF Productions. Make sure to rate and review our show if you loved it, and give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you stream your podcast to stay up to date on all upcoming episodes. Thanks for listening, and go easy on us. We're not your ex.